up, y'all? It's Young Rick. We back at it again with part 3 of our mixing drums tutorial. So just to review what we did, we added some compression and we added some saturation to our drums. Now, the two positive things that these did is they gave character to our drums and they gave thickness to our drums. But what's the negative thing that they did to our drums? Because we don't get with mixing, it's a trade-off. You don't get a positive without getting some sort of artifact or some type of negative. So the artifact that came up from all of this compression and saturation is that we choked the dynamics of our drums. And just to display that, I'm going to go ahead and mute our compression and saturation and just listen to how hard the kick punches without our effects applied. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Now listen to how the punch of the drums get choked when I add the compression and saturation. Alright, so we want to keep that saturation, we want to keep that compression, but we don't want to lose our dynamics. What do? This is where we add our EQ. Our EQ can bring back those dynamics in a way to where we can still keep our compression and we can still keep our saturation. So let's go ahead and pull up some EQ so we can get started. Now basically what I want to do with this EQ is exactly what I did right here when I was leveling. Understand, when I was leveling, I was building dynamics. I made the kick drum and the clap louder than the hi-hat. So we're gonna replicate that, but we're gonna replicate it through EQ. So I'm gonna start off with our kick drum, and that's gonna have me focus on this bottom bell right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick a frequency from 20 to 100 and then give it a boost of about 3. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Alright, so after running through the frequencies, I realized that all of the frequencies sounded good. They all brought our kick drum back. They brought the dynamics of our kick drum back. The only difference between the frequencies that I heard is how bright or how dark they sounded. I noticed that when I went to 20, the kick drum of our whole drum kit started to get darker, but when I moved up to the 100, it started to get brighter. So I'm gonna keep it at 100 because I want to keep our kick drum. I don't want it to get too dark. I want it to get bright, but we're gonna give it that 3 dB boost, and then we're gonna start thinking about the other section. Now this band right here is a bell boost, and it gives us from 3K all the way to 16K. What I'm gonna use this bell boost for is our hi-hats. What we're gonna do right here is we're gonna bring the dynamics back to our hi-hats. We're gonna try to give it some air, some clarity. So again, we're not when we're using this bell, we're not gonna be thinking about our kick drum or clapper anymore. We're gonna be listening to that like hi-hat, the top end of our drum kit. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm gonna also boost at about 1 dB. All right, and forgive me, we weren't dealing with a hi-hat. We were actually dealing with a triangle as far as our percussion. So I had to correct myself right there. But one thing I want to notice, or I wanted you to notice about this EQ move I made here is I chose around 16 hertz for our boost, and I know that's a little above the hearing range, but because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bandwidth knob right here and I'm going to broaden the bandwidth. That way it's even though it's boosting at 16, it's going to also boost those lower frequencies to the 10K, but it's going to be a lot more gentle than just actually boosting at 10K. So let me go ahead and broaden that up real quick. All right, and also notice that I gave it a 1 dB boost. So I didn't boost it as big as I boosted our kick drum, because remember, we're using the EQ to add dynamics. We don't want a static boost. So we want to build a shape here. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to bypass this EQ, because we brought dynamics back to our kick drum and we brought dynamics back to our triangle. Now, I'm going to bypass this EQ and we're going to listen and see if we hear a difference. See if it brought those dynamics back, if it brought the punch back, if it brought that tone back. So this is with the EQ off, and then I'm going to turn it on in the middle of after a couple of runs. Now, perfect. Now, if you listen back to that, we brought back all of the flavor of the kick drum and the hi-hats, but we brought it back in a unique way. It's not like we just leveled it up. We picked our own particular frequencies. Understand that if we would have chose any different frequencies, if I would have chose like 30 instead of 100, or if I would have chose 10K instead of 16K, it would have gave us a completely different sound. So EQ is a really big part of how you get your sound as a mix engineer. It's not everything to it, but it's a very big part. Now, we've got our kick drum and our triangle handled. What about our clap? Now, this EQ only gives us 2 bands, so we're going to go ahead and add another EQ to get the dynamics back to our middle clap. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and gain stage this plugin back to its original level, and we're going to give it a final A and B. All right, so let's do that. Perfect. So this was before our drum bus EQ. After drum bus EQ. All right, perfect. So now that we're so you can clearly hear that made the drums pop out a lot more. But we also want to bring that clap out too. So let's go ahead and add that next EQ. I'm gonna go ahead and stay with the Puigtech brand, but we're gonna get their mid-range EQ. Now here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this mid frequency band to give it, before we even focus on our clap, we're going to actually try to bring out a little bit more of our drum and just the whole bass element of our kit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go around this 700 right here, and then I'm gonna give it a 1 dB boost, and we can hear how that sounds. And as you can see, it just gave a little bit more knock to our kick. So next, we're gonna go ahead and get to the part we've all been waiting for, which is our clap. So we're going to skip this dip band, which allows us to do a cut, and we're going to go straight to our next peak. This allows us to choose from 1K all the way up to 5K. So I'm going to go ahead and start at 3K. I'm going to give it a 2 dB boost, and we're going to focus and hone in on that clap, see what it does to the clap. So let's go ahead and get it set to 5K real quick, or 3K, and I won't have it turned down, that way you can hear that boost, and let's get to it. All right, and just so we can have a very clear listen, I'm gonna go ahead and give a before and after on this EQ. And remember, listen to the listen to the clap and a little bit of the drum. It'll bring a little bit more of that kick drum out too. So I'm gonna just start it off on before, and then I'm gonna punch right in. So this is before our EQ. And as you can see, we got a lot more character out of our drums. So as far as drum bus EQ, this is the tutorial. This is exactly what I would do to color my EQ and get it back to the dynamics back after we go ahead and added that compression and saturation. So the last thing I want to do now that we added both of our EQs and added those dynamics back is let's get it back to its original level, and let's bypass and see how all of our processing sounds before and after. So this is before all of our processing right here. This is after all of our processing: compression, saturation, color, EQ. So as you can see, even though we use samples and for our drums to produce our drums and everything, adding a good mix to it, especially our mix bus processing, has made them a lot more powerful. So this was the tutorial and the lesson for today. Y'all niggas be tuned in for the next one. I'm Young Rick. It's Westside Level. I'm gonna see you on the next episode. I'm gone.